it's true that you don't really own anything. It's all borrowed for a time, and being comfortable with that, being okay with that, and then saying, hey, how can I leave the world better than I found it, is one of my, I guess, rules for life.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Build It to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe that the key to scaling your business and compounding your wealth starts every single day with a mindset of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire principles. Our ultimate goal, to help you scale and compound your wealth so you can give more or all of it away for maximum impact. I'm your host today, Brett Swartz, and every episode we feature some of the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires. They share their principles, values, secrets, and wisdom, providing each of us with the insights we need to reach the next level of success and impact. I'm excited today for our guest. He's out of the Illinois, Chicago area. And, he really has a passion for helping you to become your own source of financing so you can have financial control of your future. He is an expert when it comes to bank on yourself, life insurance, and so much other things. He's also a certified financial planner. He's been on the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast multiple times, and he's one of our, if not, I think the number one go-to expert when it comes to life insurance and planning on those types of things. Please welcome to the show with me, Mr. Mark Willis. Mark, how are we doing?
Hey, great to see you, Brad. How are you?
I'm better than I deserve. It's great to be here with you. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us just a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah, no problem. It was never grew up with a silver spoon in my hand, man, but learned quite a bit about finances the hard way as we went through the Great Recession, and my wife and I were scratching together multiple side jobs, trying to make it all work, and struggling under the mighty weight of 6 figures of student loan debt with not a lot of income to throw at that monster. And it was in the midst of all of that we stumbled across strategies like Bank on Yourself and others that have absolutely changed my life, changed my family tree, and changed our legacy. And so I have the great privilege now as a certified financial planner and a 3-time #1 best-selling author and the owner of Lake Growth Financial Services to serve lots of folks. I mean, folks in every state across the United States and folks around the world too, that are all just wanting to not just be a tennis ball floating down the gutter of life. I feel like that's mostly where people live. They feel like they're just sort of being drug along by the culture or by, I talked to a guy just before this meeting here, and he's with his family every year, and he said that he and his wife both grew up just their family made terrible bad money decisions, and he wanted something better. He wanted a, I guess, guide or mentor that could show them better ways to think and live with their money, their economy, their own future, their own legacy. And we talked about the crab bucket mentality. You probably know about this, where if you've been around, if you've been in a bucket of crabs your entire life and you try to claw your way out of there, they're going to yank you back down. Part of my own story resembles that in some ways, just learning to think bigger, think bolder, fresh ideas and approaches, and hopefully bring a few crabs along with us for the journey.
Absolutely love it, Mark. And love the background and love the passion, right? And the niche and the focus, right? That's one of the key things that you've done, and I love all of that. So in today's episode, I do want to take a little bit of a step back. Like we've really done some deep dives into the Bank on Yourself, and we'll link to those in the show notes here for Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. I think Mark's been on at least 2, maybe even 3 times beforehand. But today's show, I really want to talk about scaling your business, right, and scaling your ability to be a 3-time best-selling author, and scaling and be a top professional in your industry, because I think that's really part of how we compound and multiply impact and freedom for people. So what would you say has been the #1 secret, Mark, to doing just that for how you scale just your business and your life?
Well, I forget, it was Tim Ferriss, maybe someone else, that brought up the idea of EADS, which is eliminate, automate, delegate, so you can scale. So in that order, it's like reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Eliminate. How much of the work you do today is absolutely meaningless and won't matter 5 years from now? If it doesn't matter 5 years from now, you probably shouldn't be doing it today, shouldn't spend more than 5 minutes on it now. Let's say it that way. So eliminate. Automate. What are some things you don't have to do yourself manually? What could you possibly automate? There's so many tools and resources out there that you can put to work so you don't have to be working the manual labor stuff that you might not even find enjoyable. Third, delegate. And there are 5 levels of delegation, which we probably don't have time to get into, but there are levels of trust that you might have with other people. You can delegate down. You can also delegate up. And there are a number of jobs that I've had to fire myself from within my business over the last 12, 13 years that I no longer am allowed to do. And, my staff doesn't even allow me to do some of these things anymore. And it's a great relief to me too. And I'm sure they're relieved that I'm not in there fussing around and messing up their systems. So eliminate, automate, delegate. When you do those 3 things and you're focused on it, you can finally scale.
Perfect. I absolutely love it. That's great. Yeah. EADS. Okay, so now walk us through how, when you hire, right, and you're building the culture, you're building the values, you're building the vision, and some of the rhythms that's associated with your, your human operating system, if you will, right? That, right? Because I like that practical kind of big version, but walk us into like, what's the rhythms that you're practicing with your team and your company to make sure that you guys are staying aligned with the vision?
We follow the EOS system, and we do a level 10 meeting weekly. For those that don't know, just briefly, that's just a regular recurring get on the same page kind of meeting. We look at our key metrics. All of us bring a scorecard to the meeting. Are we doing it? Are we on track? Are we off track? We have 90-day deliverables, key rocks, big rocks as we call them. And so we're having those meetings and we're asking ourselves, are we on track or off track? What are we doing here? What's working? What's not working? We also follow the after action review. That's from the military, but they say, what worked, what didn't work, and what will we KISS for the following week. And KISS stands for keep, improve, start, and stop. And Brett, candidly, the stop is the hardest one for me. Once you get into a rhythm of something, it's hard to stop doing it. I call it institutional scar tissue. If you've done something for long enough, it just feels like you got to keep doing it for doing its sake. But we'll find a big project that we didn't see the results on, and we tried it for 3 years in a row, and it never gave us the results we were looking for. Maybe it was a marketing project or something. After 3 years, you need to go out and, what's the old phrase? You got to kill your darlings or something like that. You got to get out there and get rid of the things that you still think, well, if we give it one more college try, maybe it'll work. No, it's okay to let go of some things, to stop doing things. So again, that's what worked, what didn't work, what are you going to keep, improve, start, stop. We try to do that process in a regular way. In fact, this is the last thing I'll mention quickly and get your feedback. We've started doing a not to do meeting. So once a quarter, we get together and we bring a list of processes, Word documents, maybe it's a technology that we're using or software that we're subscribed to, or maybe it's a regular marketing effort that we're trying to work on. And we just once a quarter, I actually have little prizes for folks in our company if they can bring to me things that are no longer working, an old email template we don't use anymore, stuff like that. Again, that institutional scar tissue that can just clog up the business. Get rid of that stuff. Keep on moving.
Wow, so much wisdom there. I love that. I love the way you broke that down, right? After action review, what worked, what did not work, and then the KISS, keep, improve, start, stop. And then just a level 10 meeting, right? Having a systematic way that you're looking at key metrics, scorecard, and then key rocks that you're trying to achieve in the next 30, 60, 90 days. AI, let's bring this into the conversation now, right? How is AI helping to improve whatever you're doing? And, what would be the top one that you're using, either ChatGPT or you're using it to scale your business at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I found it's been very helpful because I write a podcast most weeks, and we have guests on there as well, but probably 2 out of 4 weeks a month. It's a solo show. So I'll get ideas from that, generator, and I'll use various different kinds. I try to pick from 2 or 3, and I usually use it to help me think through implications. So I don't use it to write my script. And I typically will get some ideas, maybe some examples of For example, if I want an example of, what's an example of someone who maybe made the choice not to decide something today, what would be, the implication of not choosing something today? I want to get 10 different examples. Give me 10 different examples of someone who delayed their choice and what that might do to them into the future. So I'll get that, and that's a great little brainstormer or idea generator. That's what I use it for the most part. We have used it for helping us with social media prep and ideation with sending out tweets and that sort of thing. And for the most part, that has been it. We really try to keep our personality in our conversations. One exception to this rule, we recently did a 8-part mini-series called the Periodic Table of Financial Abundance. And it's literally like the whole financial universe boiled down into a periodic table, kind of like back in science class. Like, what are all the elements you'd need to have a financially abundant life? Everything from real estate to legacy to, life insurance to investing to everything else. What all is needed? What are you missing? And we had a great time doing that mini series. It was 8-part. And so we turned it into a book. We asked several different services. We looked at Google's Gemini and Twitter's Grok and a couple others to just turn that episode into a chapter. And it actually worked. It did a great job making all that happen without too much problem or trouble.
Fantastic. I love that. So it sounds like ideas for implications for someone not, delaying the choice, right? And figuring out ways to use the AI in a way that'll expand upon or give you things that you haven't thought about, still keeping in your own words, and then now moving into the book. The question I have on the book side of things. So, are you self-publishing, or what does that look like, or what's your process of launching the book?
Well, in the past, we've worked with other authors. That's what really gave me the opportunity to hit bestseller lists over and over again. But I really like the idea of what Dan Sullivan does. Dan Sullivan puts out 4 little books every year. So once a quarter, he's cranking out a book. Well, you and I both know it's a lot to crank out a book. And certainly no one else is Dan Sullivan. He's one of a kind. But if you're like me, I'm writing these solo episodes all the time for my show, which is Not Your Average Financial Podcast. And quite often people wonder, well, is there a written copy of this? Or could you give us some more information on that strategy you did for this episode back in 5 weeks ago? So what I plan to do is every quarter, compile some of the best of the episodes, put them together in a book, link to our podcast, link to our YouTube channel, and give people a deliverable. Maybe it's a book that's only 40 to 80 pages long. And we're able to do that pretty quickly. Again, the AI gets you 50% of the way there, 60% of the way there. Then you get to add your own voice, make it your own voice. But you're taking something I've already crafted as a podcast and turn that into another media, a book in this case. And it could be a downloadable or it could be a physical copy. We're using Canva to print out physical copies, almost like a magazine, if you will. So it's almost like back to the quarterly newsletters that financial advisors may be used to send out, but now it's in the form of a well done, all color, book every quarter.
I love that, and it makes a ton of sense. Again, Mark Willis here, certified financial planner, bank on yourself expert, and also just has a great mind for business and acumen for growing and scaling businesses. What other things that you feel are effective today for really helping people to make decisions, right? You talked about the implications of people delaying their choice, right?
Yeah.
So what are some ways that you're able to keep the momentum going forward when people have delayed choices?
Well, yeah, I think the implication-based questions are something that many people don't think about. So when somebody tells me in our one-on-one advisory consultations that I'll do with clients, I'll ask them about hey, what's your 401k balance like? And hey, what's your savings account like? And we'll get in also to problems where we get into well, what are you most concerned about with the macro economy and the trends where we're seeing inflation hit record highs and that sort of thing. But then, Brett, I ask a question called an implication-based question, which is, what do you think would happen if ... So, for example, I had someone earlier today who had a 401k, and he was maxing out his 401k, and he was treading water on his debts. So, that's okay. Good for him for socking away in a 401k. But if you're treading water on your debts, which some of those interest rates were 20, 30% credit cards, and your 401k is not guaranteed and it's pre-tax, that could be a problem. So I started asking some just regular implication questions like, well, what is your understanding of the taxation of that 401k when you take the money out in retirement? I don't really know, Mark. I've never really thought about that. I guess it's, I guess at some point it'll be taxed, right? Yeah, that's right. What do you think about where taxes are headed in the future? Well, I think taxes are going up in the future. Well, what do you think would happen if taxes doubled in the future? Could they? Is it possible they could even double? Oh yeah, Mark, I think they could double. And then I showed him this. I don't know if you can see this or not. This is a Venezuela central bank note for 500 million credits. I don't know, bolivars, I guess. That is a $500 million bolivar, and I bought it for $20. And we think about the problems of inflation. What are the implications of printing all that money that we did the last few years and still continue to do today? So we ask these questions. What are the implications? What are the reasons? What are the outputs for the inputs we're putting in today? If we're packing money into a 401k, what does that actually mean for us later on? And is that something we truly want? Most people would probably say no if they think, like this guy did, that taxes are going up.
Yeah, so much wisdom there. I love that. I love the way you broke that down. And I love where you get people to think rather than giving them the answer. And it's really just the implications of these actions. Common sense, but simple, but not always easy to see, right? Unless those questions are spurring that thought process there. So okay, so scaling the business, AI, writing the books, and the level 10 meetings. What are some other ways that you found to be a great way to scale the business, or anything else you can think of right now?
Proprietary IP has been very valuable for us. So one, we attach ourselves to incredible mentors and an organization, in our case called Bank on Yourself. Behind me there is the book Bank on Yourself Revolution. I highly recommend folks check it out. It's a quality control and ongoing education apparatus. It's a training centerpiece in my financial life. I'm a certified financial planner, and that's another IP that was protected, intellectual property. You can't just call yourself a CFP. You have to go through a bunch of hoops to hit that. But I'll tell you what, Brett, there's no regulation around the words financial advisor. That can be, anybody could say those words, right? So I didn't want that. I wanted there to be some quality control. I wanted there to be some ongoing regimen to the work I do, and someone kind of looking over my shoulder to make sure I'm doing the right thing for clients. So two organizations, the CFP board and the Bank on Yourself authorized training program and a mastermind group, have been instrumental. Now, in addition to other IP like that, I've also developed my own IP. So, for example, we trademarked the phrase the Lake Growth Debt Snowbank method for paying off your debt. So if you have ever heard of the debt snowball method, well, there's the debt snowbank method, which I would say is even better than being debt-free, which, maybe someday we can get into someday, Brett. There's the getting wealthy while paying your taxes strategy. There's the two-stage rocket strategy. There's the income maximization strategy. So we've got about a dozen different tools, approaches. We just unleashed one today in our most recent episode called the CURE strategy, the catch-up retirement engine strategy, which gives people who are even in their late 60s and early 70s the chance to catch up if they've maybe they had a medical event or went through a divorce and they're starting from zero or close to zero. We show them how they can have an incredible retirement income even if they've only got a year or two left to save. So lots of incredible ways to do it, but you just have to consistently bring the aha moment to your clients and to folks who are learning and kind of circling around your orbit listening to your podcast. Bring them those aha moments. When you give them an aha moment, trust is built, and they typically would want to work with you because they can't find these strategies anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, with that, we're pausing for a quick little commercial break, and this show is brought to you by Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and we believe it's one of those strategies Mark's talking about where it's an aha moment that people can defer capital gains taxes on the sale of highly appreciated assets, whether that be a business, cryptocurrency, real estate, primary home. if you have multiple $1 million of gain, then you have a huge capital gains tax. And what if you could unlock that by selling that highly appreciated asset and then moving that into something that is liquid, diversified, and produces cash flow? And oh, by the way, you might even then partner with and work with Mark to form a bank on yourself life insurance policy, right? Where there's different ways to build wealth versus it just being stacked and captured and locked into a single asset that's maybe not producing as much cash flow. It's really not ultimately giving you the freedom and impact that you want. So go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com if you want to learn more about that, or check out the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, where we break all of that down in detail. Would love to talk to you about that. So Mark, let's touch on a little bit on the Bank on Yourself, since we've touched on some business stuff here, and maybe kind of tease out some of the other episodes that we've had. But just, you know, interest rates are higher right now, right? And is that, talks about the pros and cons of bank on yourself strategy with that, and also just, what has maybe changed since interest rates kind of basically doubled in the last couple of years. What has changed for how you're structuring these policies?
Yeah, there's a strategy out there, and actually ProPublica, which is an investigative newsroom, obtained a vast treasure trove of IRS data. It was private data, people's actual tax returns, but they had thousands of tax returns, but they released to the public the top 25 wealthiest Americans' tax returns just a year or two ago. This would include everyone from Warren Buffett to Bill Gates to Rupert Murdoch to Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, the list goes on, George Soros, the list goes on and on and on. And breaking news, the wealthy don't pay taxes. I mean, was that actually news? I'm not sure. But they do it in a perfectly legal way. This is not tax evasion. This is perfectly legal. In fact, Carl Icahn said there's a reason it's called income tax. The reason is whether you're a poor person or a rich person, if you're Apple and you have no income, you pay no taxes. So they followed a strategy, and it's a strategy anyone can research. It's called buy, borrow, die. Buy, borrow, die. And I'll explain it in 3 quick steps, and then I'll talk about how Bank on Yourself fits and even maybe improves on the buy, borrow, die strategy. So step 1, you buy an asset that doesn't produce income. So whatever the income is, it's going to be taxable. So you got to buy assets that typically are not generating you an income. Partly why Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, famously doesn't pay a lot of dividends. Step 2, borrow against that asset. So this is why Elon Musk, while he is worth a lot of money, he pays no income tax because he merely borrows against his highly appreciated Tesla stock or whatever else to fund his lifestyle or start new companies or whatever else. So borrowing against any asset doesn't produce any income. It's the same reason why when you get a mortgage or a HELOC, you don't pay a tax on that mortgage or HELOC. It's tax-free to borrow money. Lastly, and this is like the most, I'd say the least fun step, but you got to die. That's the 3rd step. You got to pass away. You got to croak. You got to push to the other side of the grass. When you pass away, all that highly appreciated assets or the real estate or whatever gets a step up in basis, and there's no taxes due to your heirs. Okay, so that's the buy, borrow, die strategy. Brett, before I jump into how Bank on Yourself fits in, do you have any questions or insights into this strategy?
Just a couple things. It's interesting how when you borrow against something, it becomes such a tax, preferred method, right? It's the essence of the deferred sales trust. You are loaning to a trust that owes you over time, and you pay taxes slowly over time only when you receive payments, right? And so that makes sense. My thought on this, though, is it's interesting. So we're before a presidential, election coming up in November. So President Joe Biden is proposed to increase capital gains tax rates from 20 to 44%. But the biggest thing is he's actually proposed to eliminate the stepped-up basis, okay? Yeah. And as well as some other things for people that are, they call it the billionaire tax, which really is actually more like a 100-millionaire tax. If you look at it, it's not just if you're a billionaire, to tax people even if they haven't received income and such. So there's a number of things that are pressing against, I think, this strategy. But maybe you can touch on that before you go into the Bank on Yourself.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I think the government is always hungry. And, the income tax itself, which started in 1913, was originally a means to get rid of tariffs. And everyone thought, well, finally, we'll all not have to pay taxes. We're going to shove our income tax system on these unsuspecting, very wealthy. I mean, the income tax was only supposed to be for the top 1%. Well, look at what happened to that. Right now, all of us In fact, the middle class and more pay the lion's share. And in fact, of course, the wealthy are paying way more than their, quote, fair share. But let's talk about how buy, borrow, die can help you even improve. When you use Bank on Yourself, how it actually helps you improve that. And I think it helps the business owner on their way to billions. So step one, borrow. Step one is buy. So you buy whole life insurance. In this case, you're buying an asset that grows guaranteed every year. This is something that even Elon Musk can't say about Tesla. There's no guarantee that Warren Buffett's stock's going up or that Facebook, Meta, whatever is going to go up. What if, Meta stocks crash? Then that's a big problem for the buy, borrow, die strategy for Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, right? If you've borrowed against your highly appreciated Meta stock and it tanks, and it has before, and someday it will again, realize there's nothing permanent about Tesla, Facebook, whatever. These companies are going to be here today, gone tomorrow. If the stock crashes, you have a margin call, and that can be a big problem even for billionaires. I mean, just watch some of the, the Big Short and some other big movies that have come out on topics like this. But with a whole life insurance policy designed the Bank on Yourself way, it grows guaranteed every year. That's first step. You have a guaranteed to grow for you asset in your balance sheet. Step two, you can borrow against the life insurance. Sort of like you can borrow against your stock or your real estate. Trump, he'll borrow against his real estate. That's a tax-free stream of income to him for his campaign or for his lifestyle. Well, you can borrow against your life insurance policy, and unlike a home equity line of credit or any other margin loan, there's no terms that you're under the thumb of some greedy banker. You get to set your repayment schedule. You have the right and ability to repay the loan at whatever pace you wish. In fact, as long as the policy is in force when you pass away, the loan can be forgiven, or actually it's netted out by the death benefit when you pass away. So if you pass away, again, to the last step, die in this case, the death benefit is income tax free. And if there's a loan against it, it's going to be netted out by the giant death benefit, and the remainder gets to be passed on to your family income tax free.
Absolutely amazing. And by the way, what's great about Mark is he breaks it down so simply, and I feel like there's a lot that just don't have the level of expertise. This is why we highly recommend, if you're looking at any kind of life insurance policy, you definitely contact Mark and you let him break down exactly how they do it, how they build it. We've sent folks his way, and he's only done just an amazing job. Mark Willis, everybody. Yeah, I love that. So that makes sense to me. So talk about interest rates a little bit here, right? So let's imagine I have borrowed against my life insurance policy a couple of years ago. Interest rates have gone up. Are these variable loans on that? And does this mean I have to pay it back sooner, or is it just accruing of the interest now? Perhaps it's higher, but then when I die, it'll be higher net payout to the loan because the interest is accrued more. But just talk about how interest rate has affected this or hasn't affected this, or the LTVs on how much you could borrow against it.
Well, this is why folks need to keep listening to your show, Brett. You're a smart cookie. You already got a lot of that figured out. That's well done. Exactly right. I will mention it really does depend on how the policy was designed, what company it was with, and how did the agent or advisor set this up. And shameless plug, then I'll answer your question directly. If folks got one of these policies and it was from an infinite wealth multiplier banker planner, there's so many nicknames out there. There is no quality control. This is the Wild West in the financial universe. Folks can get, call it the cash flow multiplier banking legacy family wealth system, right? I mean, there's so many nicknames out there, and you could find 10,000 YouTube channels talking about using life insurance as an asset class. None of them that I'm aware of have any kind of credentialing program or quality control to them, okay, except the Bank on Yourself Professionals program. It's the only program that has any kind of authorization or certification or ongoing quality control. So if you want to know that you're getting what you think you're getting, you want to work with, I don't care if it's with me or with someone else, but make sure they are Bank on Yourself professionals. Okay, so that's my little plug out of the way there. To answer your question, I'm actually happy to see interest rates rising. Not because I want to see people's mortgage rates going up, and they are. You've probably seen them too, 12% more HELOCs, last I checked, as of this recording, and even worse for professional lines of credit. I saw an 18% physician's line of credit yesterday. Yuck. So anyway, when that happens, We have a track record. Whole life insurance has done this before. Remember, it's several hundred years old in this country alone, older in other countries. So when the 80s came around, 1979, 80, 81, interest rates were going bonkers too, right there, right? What was going on? Whole life insurance dividends went up. They went up a lot, double digits in many cases, and these were all improving the performance of the whole life contract. So, I'm actually kind of hoping. I mean, the party's going to be at my house when interest rates keep rising like this, man, because it means my performance of my whole life insurance is going to do better. Now, you brought up a good point. If I borrowed against my life insurance, again, depending on how the policy was designed, loan rates might be going up too. Long story to keep it real short. Loan rates, at least the companies I would work with, are charged on a simple interest basis all year long. What does that mean in plain English? It just means you're going to have a lower cost to borrow. When you have a simple interest loan, that's a good thing. If your mortgage company called you, Brett, and said, hey, Brett, we're just thinking, man, instead of charging you compound interest, we're going to give you the option to do simple interest all year long. Would you take that deal?
All day long?
Of course you would, yeah. Because it's giving you the chance to pay down your principal faster. So bottom line is, just to give you guys some kind of numbers, if you were to borrow from most of the companies that I would recommend as a bank on yourself professional, as a certified financial planner, if you borrowed a large chunk of money and you paid it back over 4 years, we're talking something like, 1.9, 2% APR. All right, so your annual percentage rate. Meanwhile, your policy would be growing at a much higher rate than that, giving us some positive arbitrage for your dollars. And of course, maybe as important is you have complete control of the process all along the way.
Mark, before we go to the lightning round, if people want to find you and maybe consider bank on yourself a strategy for themselves, where could they find you?
Best website is kickstartwithmark.com. That's kickstartwithmark.com. We'll do a 15-minute phone strategy session, answer your questions, talk about whether it's bank on yourself or any of these other topics we brought up today. kickstartwithmark.com.
Awesome. Let's dive into the lightning round now. So, Mark, knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self and you could sit down with the person you most admire, what's the one thing they would tell you to save you hundreds of hours and put thousands of more dollars in your pocket?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this the other day, so I'm glad you brought this up. Would I rather get the question I got was, would you rather have $10 million or bring your knowledge back into your 6-year-old body? And so your question is sort of similar. I chose the 6-year-old body. I think you would too. Maybe most people would, I think. My answer to your question is time blocking. Time blocking. If you just could do nothing, if you dropped me on a deserted island and you could teach me time blocking early on, I could spend the time of my days on that island doing the right things. Building a boat, building a big flare to get a hold of somebody on a nearby barge or something. If you can learn how to manage your time well, that's the most precious and non-renewable resource. So time blocking.
Excellent. Love that. Question number 2, number 1 book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
Well, I'll give you 2. One is my obvious choice here, The Bank on Yourself Revolution. It's by Pamela Yellen, New York Times best-selling book. I've got a couple of my own books. I'm going to avoid those. The other business book I'll say is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Great book.
Excellent. Question number 3, what are you most curious about right now?
I've been really interested in how long do habits take to form, and I've been trying this new thing out with my journaling. So I'd say, what is it about habits that create us? Like first we create the habit, then it creates us. So I've been thinking a lot about that, curious a lot about that right now.
Love that as well. Next question. Number 1 leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Say the question again.
Number 1 leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Okay, I know you've asked for a lightning round, but let me give you a good one. It's just a second. Because I've had a couple come up recently, and I want to give you a good one.
And while he's going there, remember this show is brought to you by Capital Gains Tax Solutions. If you're looking to exit a highly appreciated asset, make sure you don't get caught not having a plan to help you defer that capital gains tax. Also works for eliminating estate tax. If you have a huge capital, a huge amount of estate, let me back up. You have a huge net worth that's above and beyond the exemption amounts. We can eliminate the estate tax. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We need to set everything up prior to the close of escrow. Check that out. Mark, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. There's a good one here by Confucius that I recently found. It says, a great man is hard on himself, a small man is hard on others.
One more time.
A great man is hard on himself, and a small man is hard on others.
That's good wisdom. I love it. Okay. Second to last question. Number one way that you're using ChatGPT besides helping you to write the book?
Yeah. Well, I don't use ChatGPT right now. I've been using some other ones, Google's and then Twitter's, X or whatever you want to call it, Grok. And I use it, recently I used it to write an epic rap battle. Do you know what those are? If you go on YouTube and just search epic rap battle, you and I should do one sometime. It'd be a lot of fun. But it helped give me some rhyming schemes for this battle I did between two financial tools, and had a little fun with it on my podcast.
Okay, very cool. Last question, Mark, and it's kind of the essence of and the theme and the passion behind the Build It to Billions podcast. And it's this, right? We believe that the key to scaling your business and your wealth and making an impact to help the most vulnerable people in this world starts with the mindset of stewardship over ownership, right? So how are you best practicing that stewardship over ownership? And what's something that you're really passionate about to make a difference in people's lives?
Yeah, again, I want to really give you a good answer here. I really think, honestly, it's true that you don't really own anything. It's all borrowed for a time, and being comfortable with that and being okay with that, and then saying, hey, how can I leave the world better than I found it, is one of my, I guess, rules for life. What can I do to improve the situation for the next person who's going to pick up and run with whatever it is in my house, in my business, in my life, my children, everything. So it's the old Boy Scout question. How can we leave this campground better than we found it?
Amazing. Mark Willis, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for your wisdom, for sharing how you scaled your business, your passion for bank on yourself and your expertise there, and so much that we've gleaned from this episode. One last time, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, imagine if you had a financial tool that you knew exactly what it would do for you for the rest of your life, no matter what was going on in the markets. If that's something that you're on the hunt for, would like to add to your portfolio, I can help. Go to kickstartwithmark.com. That's kickstartwithmark.com.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark. I also want to thank all of our listeners for listening to that episode of the Build It to Billions podcast. We're also streaming on Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast as well. We believe that, it's so important to continue to sharpen the saw, right? And by gleaning wisdom from successful entrepreneurs, investors, from their journey from millions to billions. And the key to scaling your wealth and your business starts with a mindset of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire principles. And our ultimate goal, again, is to help you scale and compound your wealth so you can give more, all of it away for maximum impact. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And again, this episode's brought to you by CapitalGainsTaxSolutions.com. Check that out for selling highly appreciated assets. And of course, if you're looking for and open to a way to bank on yourself with life insurance, please don't pass go. Don't collect anything until you call Mark and sit down with he and his team to map out and build a plan for you there. Appreciate everyone watching or listening today, and we will talk to you again all real soon. Bye now.